Well, hello everybody. In this video, I'm going to talk about one of the most asked questions I get about equipment. Now, I get questions about what sort of Weber kettle do you have? Or what sort of charcoal do you use? What's your favorite spatula? But by far, in messages, direct messages, comments, the biggest question I get by far is what kind of knives do I use? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today, but the first thing you should know is I do not spend a lot of money on knives. That's not how I look at knives. I'm not a knife guy. You know, there are people who just love knives and are totally into everything about knives, the blade type, the handle, everything. And I'm just not that kind of guy. I want a knife that works, that feels good when I'm cutting with it, that I can sharpen easily, that I don't need a super expensive sharpening attachment to keep sharp. I just want a knife that works and that is going to last. Now, over the years, I've used knives from several different manufacturers. Some cost more than others. And what I've really settled on are these four knives here. They're from two different manufacturers. This is a Victorinox knife, and this is I think it's a 2.0 cutlery. And these four knives here, I use in 99% of all situations when I'm cutting something for my videos. Now, beyond these four knives, there is sort of a bonus fifth cutting instrument that I use, and I'll get to that at the very end. But let's dive into each of these individually. So first, there is this slicer here. This is something I use when I'm making long cuts across large cuts of meat usually. Something like brisket, or maybe I'm trying to hand slice roast beef without having to get out the slicer, which is great, but really a pain to clean. This knife works super well, especially on brisket. This is really just about the only knife I will use slicing brisket. It is really light, it is easy to sharpen, the blade does not take a lot of maintenance. I mean, generally it doesn't get used a whole lot. I don't make brisket every day. For someone who does do brisket all the time, you know, they might have to maintain this more, but for me, this is one of those knives that I probably paid a little more for this than I would normally for a knife. And like I said, I don't spend a ton of money on knives. I think maybe when I bought this, I paid around $60 or $70. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to put links to all these knives in the video description so you can look at them yourselves and see. But this so far, and I've had this for I think a little over 3 years, has been one of the best knives I've purchased, even though it's very specific. It is not meant to do anything else but slice. It's not meant for boning or chopping or anything like that. It just really is a slicer, but it makes slicing so nice. So I'm very, very happy with this knife. Next up on the knife parade is this little guy right here. Now, I've seen this type of knife called so many things: a paring knife, a boning knife, a small knife. I just call it my small knife. Now, this is one of the 2.0 cutlery knives, and it's got a nice looking handle. I mean, it looks nice, but really it just feels really good. Now, this knife and the other two knives I have in the 2.0 cutlery brand, and I bought these all from Amazon, it just works and it's not super expensive. That's one of the things I like about it. This is really nice because the blade on this, because it's shorter, is stiff, so you can really get down in there if you need to get under some bone, into some joints, break it, slice down in between. I would say of the four knives that I have, I use this probably the third most. The slicer would be the fourth. This would be probably the third because it really is specific to those smaller jobs and boning and things like that, breaking down through joints and cutting there. But it is super easy to use, holds a nice edge, easy to maintain. I don't have any complaints about this knife, and honestly, I don't have any complaints about any of them, so let's get that out of the way. They just work well, and I enjoy them. Next up is the knife that I use the second most, and that is this. Now, this is often called a nakiri knife. It's really, really good for vegetables. I like using this to chop and slice vegetables. It's got a nice tall blade, so if you're going through something like a potato or a big piece of zucchini or cucumber, things like that, you can go all the way down through it. And it's not long like a chef's knife, which has great uses, but this you can just stay really close and really tight in there on the vegetables. It feels really good in the hand. It's not too heavy, but it's also not too light. I think when you're getting into chopping and slicing denser materials like vegetables, especially potatoes and things like that, you want some heft to the knife. And this feels really good. Not light, not heavy, just in that sweet spot. And it just feels so good when you are slicing with it. Like the others, it holds an edge nicely, has that same sort of cool looking handle, which, I don't know, looks good. Doesn't really mean anything to me. If it was all black, I'd be fine with that. But it just is a good knife. I mean, this is kind of a theme in this here. If I can get a knife that feels good and works good and it doesn't cost a ton of money, I'm happy. I'm beyond happy, actually. I just don't want to spend hundreds of dollars on a single knife and have it perform like this knife. I mean, I think if this does everything I need for it, I don't need to spend twice as much on a knife. But yeah, this is a really good knife. Kind of has a cleaver look, but it's really not a cleaver. I mean, you can do some sort of quick chopping with it if you're doing vegetables or something like that. But generally, it's just a great slicer for vegetables and things like that. I have also used it on meat. There's no problem using it for that, but it really shines when you're doing vegetables and fruit and things like that. Finally, of these 4 knives is my number 1 most used knife, the chef's knife. And this is also a 2-0 cutlery knife. It has just been wonderful. It has a longer blade here and a little bit of a curve to it, not like a chopper. So when you're rock and chopping, it works really well too. So I've used this for vegetables also many times, but I also tend to use this a lot on meats. If, say, I'm slicing up chuck roast or pork belly, things like that, to get them into cubes to make burnt ends, or chicken or anything like that. This is also that nice weight, kind of the same balance as the nakiri knife, but it's just a little bit longer, allows you to get some longer slices in there. Same as the others, it holds an edge really well, easy to maintain. And when I sharpen my knives, I just use a little suction cup sharpening stone that sits on the counter, and you draw the knife through it. And I've never had any issue with that or how the knives turn out after it. I've had more expensive sharpening stones. In fact, I have some that I've used, and then I've used my less expensive, simpler one, and I can't tell the difference, honestly. And these knives do really well with just a simple sharpening and just maintaining them every, 2 or 3 days if you use them a lot. That's how I do it. Now, if you're a chef and you're using them every day, you're probably gonna have to maintain them every day, but really, really nice knife. The chef's knife, I use this the most. Finally, maybe an honorable mention, is this, my poultry shears. These are fantastic for taking out the backbone from a chicken, a turkey, cutting through bone. It is just a really nice tool to have, and it makes things quicker. Now, you can do those things like cutting through bone and removing the spine so you can spatchcock a chicken. You can do that with a knife. This is just simpler. It moves through those bones really easily, and for me, this is one of those tools that I didn't actually have for quite a while. I would just use normal kitchen scissors. And then I think a couple years ago I got these, and man, what a difference between these and regular kitchen scissors. I love these things. There's a lot of different kinds, but yeah, these poultry shears really work for me. Yeah, so this is my cutlery tool bag. That's it. Not expensive. I don't remember what I paid for each one of these. It was not a lot. I think this was probably the most expensive at $60 or $70. This was probably second, and then kind of works on down the line. But for me, they've worked out. I've had these 3 knives, I believe, for about 3 years now, and they're performing wonderfully. This one I've had for at least 3, probably closer to 4, maybe even longer. I've been doing this for a while. I don't even remember sometimes how long I've been doing it. I've made almost 700 videos, so I've used a lot of equipment in that time, and I really have settled on these 5 implements here to help me make videos. So thanks for watching, and I hope you found this valuable, and I hope it answered some questions that a lot of you out there had about my knives.